Best of both worlds. Right?
There you go.
I'm trying to figure out the
No problem.
property tax thing.
And I do like the extra
challenge.
that you own the building, like private owner. I'm to get some property, like obviously business.
Okay, I'm gonna call the
Yeah, what I did is that we bought
FAMPO Policy Committee meeting to order Monday, January 22nd, 2024 at 7:30 PM. If we could all please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Colin, if we could please have the roll
Meg Bumpy,
here.
Lori Hayes. Here. Jason Graham.
here.
Tim Baruti.
Here.
Gerald Childress. Monica Gary. Here. Marcy Parker. Here. Bob Schneider. Crystal Vanucci. Here. Chris Yakubowski.
Here.
David Brown. Deontay Diggs.
Here.
Pamela Young.
Here.
Jacob Lane. Drew Mullins.
Here.
Kathy Coffey. Here. Joe Stainsby. Will McIntosh.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, wonderful. I think before we start, if we could at least go around the room and say what jurisdiction we're with, just because we have some new people here at the table. Maybe you already know. If you don't, we'll make it easier for you. So I'll start. I'm Meg Famke and I'm with Stafford County. Welcome.
I'm Marcy Parker. I'm with VDOT representing the Secretary of Transportation.
Chris Yakubowski, Spotsylvania County.
Jason Graham, City of Fredericksburg.
Crystal Vanucci Stafford.
Lori Hayes, Spotsylvania County.
Drew Mullins, Portland District, Spotsylvania County.
Tim Baruti, City of Fredericksburg. Will McIntosh, City of Fredericksburg.
Monica Gary, Stafford.
Yeah, no, that's administrative.
Right, and we have a few elects over here. Pamela Young, Garrisonville, Stafford.
James George, Washington District, Stafford County.
Okay, I think we have one more.
Paul's person.
Yes.
Oh, it's Senator. Oh, well, you guys.
Okay, and Fred Transit is here. Yes. Melody. And then,
David Sullivan's keyboard or.
okay, perfect. Welcome. And Kathy Bender.
Kathy Bender.
They all know her. She's an old timer. Okay, all right. Welcome to the meeting. Let's see, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Cast your vote. Oh, cast your vote. Sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion carries. Our first item of business is a public hearing. We are accepting comments and questions from members of the public. They're welcome to speak at this time. This is on item A on our agenda. It's the amendment to the fiscal year 24-27 Transportation Improvement Program to adjust funding allocations for two projects. That's the Route 1 and Exit 126 southbound improvements and number SMART 22-I-95 Exit 126 STARS study improvements. Do we have anybody here from the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will close that public hearing. Do we have anybody that submitted any comments online?
Not on that item, but
On the
for
others?
general public comments, we do have one.
Okay, all right, moving on to the public comments. Do we have anybody from the public here that would like to address the board just in general? Okay, then I do know we have some written comments.
Yeah.
Holly, are you gonna read those for us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
I'm gonna put my timer on. The first comment is from a letter submitted by Jane Leeds, a public advocate for the disabled, aged, and financially challenged. FAMPO members may be looking forward to a new year, but about a quarter of the GWRC's residents are not. Although the disabled, aged, and financially challenged are invited to your monthly meetings, the only concerns actively addressed are those of enabling single drivers to commute to their jobs or all the things that maintain their quality of life. The old and overused excuse that there is no funding for audible signals, light rail systems, better and more resources related to accessibility issues are always the same. There's no funding for that. That is a lie told all across the country. It is a matter of priorities. It is also a very important matter relating to employment. None of the members of the GWRC use the VRE or Fredericksburg Go on a regular basis, if at all. How can you understand the scope of needs and how resources are to be used if you are not impaired? Young impaired people are trained by our school budgets to work when they have no safe, reliable, accessible, or affordable transportation. So they become tax users, not taxpayers, warehoused in government programs paid for by you. The cost of maintaining their lives is far greater than the cost of providing transportation infrastructure they require. Quality of life demands transportation. It is the single and biggest obstacle for those who are challenged. If you doubt my reasoning, give me your car keys for 2 weeks and use public transit. Even then you have an advantage because most of you are not limited physically and or financially. I know the difference as I used to drive a car and travel far and wide in the USA and beyond. Many who are impaired live outside major cities where more resources are available. They simply cannot afford to live there in order to use those resources. The kind of travel and resources I am suggesting are clearly not a priority by FAMPO, Board of Supervisors, or the Commonwealth. This is extremely short-sighted and discriminatory. The tokenism that has been applied by your planning is offensive and demeaning. None of the so-called improvements offered have significance or have improved our quality of life. The resources for offering rides are so seriously underfunded or inaccessible that it renders them generally useless. I have tried to share information about other areas that have built light rail systems. No one took the time to look at or discuss them. It takes a decade or more to acquire right-of-way that is optimal to the success of such a system. Design the infrastructure, stations, equipment, and other resources to make such a system available and meaningful. Wasting money and resources on dirty microsystems of transport, commuter buses, and the railless VRE make no sense in the long run. Businesses and tourism venues flourish and quickly attach themselves to light rail. Enabling single drivers is a fool's game. I lived in California for 20 years and saw firsthand the pollution, gridlock, and waste of fuel, time, and resources keeping cars on the freeways. 6 and 7 lanes of vehicles traveling in both directions were parking lots almost every day of the week during rush hour and holidays. My final point is this: we can all benefit by planning light rail in the GWRC in the next decade. Fewer car accidents and use of EMS, police, and fire departments would create cost savings. Businesses would not have to have huge parking lots for vehicles.
Time is up.
Thank you. And both of these comments were attached to your agenda, so you could have read them in advance. And then my second comment was submitted by Joe Brito, a member of CTAC, the Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee. This comment is for Spotsylvania officials. Several of their board members commented about the Regional Transportation Authority to the effect that they consider it to be taking their constituents' tax money for use on projects in other jurisdictions. I think Spotsylvania needs to look at the big picture of cost versus benefits and quality of life for everyone. Many of their commuters are clogging the roads in other jurisdictions where some of the RTA tax money will be spent. Regional planning is the way to get out of gridlock. Every day we sit and it hurts our businesses and costs localities millions of dollars a year in lost revenue. I believe the RTA proposal is to increase the sales tax by half a penny and to increase a grantor's tax that will primarily be collected at builder or developer deed transfer to make development pay for itself. Another part of the proposal is for the state to return our transportation funds that are going to Hampton Roads. Much of the increased sales tax revenue will be coming from Central Park and Spotsylvania Town Center, where a large percentage of Stafford and Fredericksburg citizens shop. So the notion of taking Spotsylvania citizens' tax money doesn't fit. The proposal is for the authority to give each locality 40% of the revenue back for their local transportation needs, while the authority would use the rest on a regional approach to improving transportation flow. If Spotsylvania doesn't get on board, Orenburg and Massaponax are going to be a complete mess when the new water park opens. Regional officials are working on a plan to be able to compete for state and federal transportation money. Localities to our north and south have created RTAs that give them the advantage of competing for state and federal transportation money. For every dollar the RTA provides, the state and feds will match it with $4 and in some cases up to $9. We must be able to compete to fund our regional transportation and trail needs. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Collie. All right, thank you for those public comments. We'll move on to item 7, the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, this includes the minutes. It includes tip adjustments for moving money from one project to another. It's not new money. The annual listing of transportation obligations, we're supposed to approve those, but this is all stuff that's happened a year ago. We just require by federal authorities to have a listing and to officially adopt it, but it's everything we did last year. It's nothing new. And then there's a public comment period that's requested, and E is a rollover of existing projects that you already approved to put into the old SIP. Now that we've moved to the new SIP, we have to roll over the projects that were approved in the interim. So it's just a rollover. There's no new projects or new money. It's just moving them from one document to another document. And the modifications for those 3 projects at the bottom, again, it's not new money. It's just adjusting the project descriptions and what can be included for the money. It's not new money. All of these things you've already approved, except the minutes, of course, which are the new minutes.
Madam Chair, move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
For a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on any of these items? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 8, Ian, your FAMPO administrator report.
See how much work we get done with one vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I only have 9 slides and 2 of them are introductions. So actually there's only 7 slides for you today. Happy to know. Just going to look at welcoming the new members to FAMPO, looking at the current projects, because I think new folks on our boards like to know what's going on. What do we do here, right? And it also reminds those of us who've been around a while what we've got that's currently going on, and then some way forward items. Next slide. So welcome to the new folks. Some of them you've met tonight. They're here. Those are both members of the FAMPO Policy Committee and alternates, right? I've just put them all together, but they are both members and alternates there. For example, Mr. Mullins and Mr. Childress won't both be on FAMPO at the same time. The one will be the member, the other one will be the alternate, but I've just listed the names for you and which counties and jurisdictions they come from. Just a reminder, alternates only participate and vote if the members are absent for some reason. So each jurisdiction has, for example, the FAMPO jurisdictions have 3 members. So if only 2 arrive, one of the alternates then becomes a voting and participating member. So as long as we keep to those, you may all participate. Next slide. And Happy New Year to everybody. This is our first meeting of the year. So welcome back from the holiday period.
Well, and I just want to add, if I may, there, Ian, for all the members that are on there, they all receive all the correspondence that we all receive that are acting voting members for FAMPO correspondence. So they should be up to date and up to speed on everything. If you can't come to a meeting, just remember to send your alternate because it will impact votes. And hopefully you can let people know way in advance so they can plan something ahead.
Correct. And if you can't be here for illness or whatever, you're supposed to let the chairperson know, but I'm the proxy collecting all the information. So if you send it to me, I'll make sure the chairperson does know them. Next slide. What does FAMPO do? So I've put this in my own language, right? The federal regulations, it sounds a lot more fancy, but I just thought plain English, right? What do? We monitor the regional transportation system. That means checking on congestion, checking on the transit options if they're functional. We plan the future of the transportation network. So we conduct studies, we bring you information, and FAMPO then plans together the future of the transportation network, the roads, the rail lines, the buses, the bike paths, the sidewalks, all that kind of thing. You all, known as the policy committee, then set the policies for FAMPO in the region, right? And sometimes that includes policies which impact the rural counties as well, King George and Caroline County, because, for example, Route 3 goes through all of our regions, and as you know, we're trying to get Route 3 declared a corridor of statewide significance. Why? Of course, when it gets congested and we have to upgrade it, we have to find the money to upgrade it. And if you get it declared a corridor of statewide significance, it's easier to find the money from the state when we need to do that. By way of example, the roads don't stop at the border of the county, they cross, right? So then once we've planned the future and set the policies, we then have to find the funding for whatever transportation improvements, even if it's a sidewalk. How do you fund it, right? So we assist with finding funding for improvements to the transportation system, including the station right next to us. The train station is being upgraded. So some of that funding came through GWRC and FAMPO. We then involved the local community in all of these activities. We're an MPO, a Metropolitan Planning Organization, and metropolitan planning organizations were established by Congress for the simple reason that the state departments of transportation and the federal Department of Transportation was building highways straight through our communities. And in some cases, they split communities apart, right? Because the highway went right through the middle of a neighborhood. And the Congress decided that there should be a local say in deciding where to put highways. And out of that concern was born metropolitan planning organizations. We are one of them, maybe a smaller region in the world, but we are meant to involve the local community in planning decisions. That's actually the original reason MPOs exist. FAMPO was founded in '93. Then number 6, we work with state, local, and federal authorities to secure an improved regional transportation system. So we have a networking function. Try to bring the state, the counties, the city, state partners together so that we plan together. So that's kind of just in a nutshell the key things that we do. As FAMPO, the George Washington Regional Commission seeks to achieve these same things for rural counties to the degree that funding will allow. We're limited in the funding that we receive for the rural counties from the state, but we do these same tasks for Carolina and King George. Next slide. Current projects. Some of the projects, and if I had to list all of them, there'd be pages and pages, and I try to keep these things short. So we're currently updating the travel demand model. That's a computerized model which tells us where we're going to have congestion in the future. And we need to know that because if you're going to spend a lot of money, you don't want to spend the money where there's going to be no traffic. You only spend the money where there's going to be a problem. So that model helps us predict where the congestion is going to be. We're busy updating it with VDOT, who now owns the model for our region. It's a year-long process to update that model. It includes economic data. It includes counting the cars on a whole bunch of roads to see if the model is accurate. Whole lot of things. Demographic data goes in there. We're currently busy with scoring and allocating federal funding to local projects. We have funding called CMAC and funding called STGB. And as I said in the previous meeting, those are acronyms. STGB stands for Surface Transportation Block Grant Funding. Comes from the federal government, and we get allocated every year an amount of funding that we then allocate to projects. And the other acronym, CMAC, stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Funding. So those are two sources of funding. It's about $6 to $6.5 million a year that we get. We're currently busy allocating that funding to projects that all of your localities have submitted to us and requested funding. Smart Scale, you may or may not know about Smart Scale. Smart Scale is the statewide process for handing out the big money in the state for projects. So whether you're in King George County or whether you're in Spotsylvania County, you can apply. And there are two big groups of funding. There's what they call the district grant funding, where counties and the city apply for typically the smaller projects. And then there's the HPP funding, which stands for Highway Priority Project Funding. Sorry, even I get caught out by these acronyms. And the person helping me back there is our Commonwealth Transportation Board member,
Laura
Laura Sellers. Thank you, Laura, for the help and for laughing at me. And then preparing smart scale applications. So we help as FAMPO and GWRC, the jurisdictions with particularly the rural jurisdictions, but we also submit a list of high priority projects, both for FAMPO and we also do the work for GWRC to submit projects. Those are typically the bigger projects. They typically get more funding, but we also compete against the whole state. So that is a difficult process, which is getting harder. Then we are currently participating in VDOT, the Virginia Department of Transportation's pipeline studies and STAR studies. In the FAMPO jurisdictions, we currently have 3 on the go. Route 3, which is in the city of Fredericksburg in Spotsylvania County, Salem Church Road, which is in Spotsylvania, and Route 208, which is Courthouse Road in Spotsylvania. Those studies are run by VDOT. We participate in the study. We then also supervise FAMPO studies. We've got 2 new ones that are on the go. The first one is the River Crossing Pre-NEPA Alternative Study. That is the I shouldn't use the word investigation, right? Because some people don't like it in the US. It's a study to look at the needs and the possibility of building a bridge over the Rappahannock River west of I-95. And then we have the Safe Streets for All study, which includes projects for safety in all 5 jurisdictions. And you'll hear about that a little more tonight. Next slide. So GWRC, which is not us, but just to give you an indication what we do in the rural counties, we updating the travel demand model, which also affects the rural counties. We're assisting with the GWRC small scale applications for high priority projects. We are participating in another VDOT pipeline study in Caroline County on US 1, and the Safe Streets for All program covers all 5 jurisdictions. As I said, the rural work program, we update the long range rural transportation plan, which we're just about to complete. We've written in-house the transportation chapter of the Caroline Comprehensive Plan. It's almost complete. We're starting now at the moment the Trailways feasibility study in King George County in the Dahlgren area, and we will soon begin the Carmel Church small area plan for Caroline County. Next slide. Completed studies. The East to West Mobility Study is complete. Final drawings and the cost estimates have been given to local staff. The BCR Trail and Bridge and Tunnel Study is now complete. Final drawings have been done and they're with VDOT. And the Freight Summit was completed last year and we're signing that off as well because it is complete. Next slide. The FAMPO vision. We've been talking for the past year about our vision. What is our vision? What are our priorities? What are the key projects over the next 50 years that we should be tackling? And what is our funding plan? So we're building this slowly over time as people feel comfortable to say what they think our projects or priorities should be, then we work on those. Next slide. This is your last slide, just some key things that are happening at the moment. The Fredericksburg station renovation, the platforms have been laid, the handrails and the lighting is almost complete, and the remedial work and the painting continues. It's not going to be long before it's complete. Just a reminder, the RTA subcommittee that we were talking about at the GWRC meeting earlier meets on Monday next week in this very room at 6 p.m. We've invited all 5 jurisdictions to attend. Tomorrow morning, if you're interested, the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority has its board meeting and you can watch it online. And FXB Go, the Fredericksburg Regional Transit Operator, has their strategic plan out for public comment. That's where you find it, and we'll put these slides on the website so you can access them from tomorrow morning. Please do give any comments you have on the Fred Transit strategic plan, which is available for public comment. Chairperson, that's all I have for you tonight. Happy to take a question if somebody.
Do we have questions for Ian tonight? Well, I guess you did a great job there, Ian.
Or it's late.
All right, moving right along to Smart Scale, round 6. Our CTV meeting results and regional project choices.
Good
So-
evening. I'm up here so I can see. So this is another update for all of you. This is an update on the
last Commonwealth Transportation Board meeting that just occurred. This is a final policy revisions for Smart Skill Round 6. I'm also going to talk about our potential projects. I marked through this because I had sent out the packet for the GWRC board, and the very next day, as of January 16th, there was a change. So, summary of the final revisions. There were 5 important ones. They decided to calculate the congestion factor in scoring our projects for up to 7 years in the future instead of using present metrics. Revising economic development to reflect the state priorities. And we are going to be able to put in the same number of applications as in previous rounds, so that's going to be good. And they are restricting our high priority projects eligibility to a list of project types. They're going to be eliminating funding step 2. There'll be more explanation on the following slides for all of you. And last we had all heard, they were removing the land use factor from our scoring metrics, and that was going to affect our projects a great deal. It's going to change a lot for us because that was a factor that had benefited a lot of our smaller projects and our bike ped projects greatly, and they were going to remove it. But as of the 16th, they changed at the last minute to reinstate that factor as a metric, but to change it and use it as a multiplier toward the other metrics. Next slide. So the first one, before they were using the congestion factor as a present. They were using a present congestion metrics to score projects, but projects aren't built today. It takes them 6 to 10 years to be built, so that didn't make sense. So they're now using the projected congestion metrics for the next 6 to 10 years, 7 years, to account for problems that will develop in the near term. This changed the mix of project types in urban areas toward larger highway primary improvement types. Next slide. This changes the economic development metric. Right now, it's a very lengthy process. People who are putting in applications have to put in tons and tons of economic development sites, and it just scores by square footage. They're changing all of that. They're going to be using sites that are put in by the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. This is supposed to be a much more streamlined process and easier for us and for all of you localities who are putting in projects. Next slide. So this is a big change. This affects mostly MPOs and PDCs. The high priority project stream, there are 2 streams, district grant and high priority projects. Before, it just mattered where a project was. Now it mattered what it is. And I've explained this before, but for the new folks, now we are only going to be able to apply for this stream if we have these kinds of projects. So new through lanes, new roadway, new interchanges, new bridge, new corridor study improvements. It's very strict because it's supposed to be state high priority projects. It's supposed to be large, regionally significant projects. It's not meant to fund small projects, intersection improvements, standalone bike ped. That is that when they did this review process of this last year, they found out that there was a bias towards smaller and smaller projects. They wanted to correct that. So that's what they've done with this. Next slide. The next thing they did was remove step 2 from this funding process. So step 1 was funding locality projects. Those are the projects that you guys are going to put in with your localities with the district grant program funding. Step 2 allowed small projects that say FAMPO or GWRC would put in that would have fit the district grant program criteria to be funded with HPP funds before the rest of the projects. Step 3 is allocating HPP funding to large projects across the state. They're getting rid of step 2, which means that all of our regional projects now have to compete statewide against well-funded places like Hampton Roads or Northern Virginia. So that's going to change everything for us. We are no longer going to be able to submit small projects, and we're going to be competing completely statewide. So when they did this, when they ran the scenario, when the CTB ran the scenario, the HPP average funded project went from 15 million with 30 projects funded to 31 million with only 17 projects funded. All bike ped projects were removed from the funding. And in general, bike ped projects were reduced from 51 to 15 funded projects overall for the program. So that was a big change.
If that doesn't make sense, do you remember there are two kinds of funding?
Yes.
There's high priority, which is what we do, that's FAMPO and GWRC. Then there's district funding, which FAMPO and GWRC can't do, which your jurisdiction can do. That's why those numbers look like they don't add up, because they're two different pots.
All right, couple questions, Grace. Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Right, Jam?
It's
Hot new flavor.
Graham jam.
There you go. Patent pending. So that last sentence,
Yeah.
leveraged funding will be essential. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what other MPs or MPCs have for leveraged funding versus what we would be expected to do currently? And how you would expect us to be able to compete to have any projects?
So
selected?
we are preparing for next Monday night for your discussion on the RTA, a very comprehensive answer to that question. The short version is we are going to struggle because we no longer have step 2. We're going to struggle to get funding for larger projects in our region if we put zero leverage funding on that, because they are not going to compete well against Hampton Roads, who puts $100 million down on the table as their local contribution and asks for 150 million from Smart Scale. We come along with a $50 million project and put $0 down. The cost benefit analysis is going to work against us, right? And we've got some examples, and they've run the numbers for us. And they produced some slides, which we're going to show you next Monday night, where they've showed how, John, what was the percentage of projects that still would do well with zero funding?
So when they're doing analysis of casting, 2% of the projects submitted were funded through Smart Scale with 0% leverage funding when they're requesting $30 million or more.
So if the project is over $30 million and you put 0 down from the region,
2% chance.
only 2% chance of getting funded. That's in the words of the presentation made to the CPD, not in our words, right? It's their slides. We just copied and pasted. So bear that in mind. And also bear in mind that they're now biasing against small projects.
Right.
So first of all, the bias is against small projects. Second of all, only 2% of the larger projects succeed if they've got 0 local funding. So everyone is cross about the RTA. So at least a way we could get some of that funding to match, to at least not have everything go to Hampton Roads in North Virginia. Just saying, shoot me later.
That was my what I was afraid you were going to say. There, right now, we have no other option if we want any projects funded via FAMPO through this.
I mean, unless the jurisdictions put in cash, right? That doesn't mean you can't put in cash,
But-
but you have to take that from one of your other programs, like education or something.
Right, okay, thank you.
Oh, come on. You know that's a hot topic.
So one of the things that we
Sorry, I
proposed to
didn't
the
say
CTV back in the summer was that we wanted to have another category created and kind of separate out our region because we don't fit into Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. And they were going down that direction. And then as I turned around to our CTV member, Ms. Sellers, and, we heard, a month ago that they weren't going to do this. And it's all about the votes at the CTV board. So this is really, not good for us.
The warning from
Disappointing.
staff and the TAC have said the same thing, right? So shoot all of us
So
if
I'll
you want
ask-
to, but
Do you want to
But
come add
we-
anything? I'm sure you know a lot more, Laura.
we just
Not
have.
that I'm willing to stay on the mic, but.
Right.
We as staff have a concern that we're going to do worse this year than we did in the previous few years, because we're not anticipating that this region will put down a lot of cash in terms of local match.
I know, I figure I'll take some of the questions, right?
I
And-
do have one minute.
Jason.
So this is a hypothetical, and so I'm not expecting a complete answer on it. But just based on your knowledge of the other CTV members. Go through this, there's no step two, there's only HPP. And I think it's, a fair bet to make right now that through this, let's just say that the only step three projects that get funded are from Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, maybe Metro. Are the CTB members going to accept that reality as our new normal?
Well, I think it depends, right? And so there were three things that we took 5 votes. There were 3 things in that first vote. And if you watch the CTB meeting, I question what you do with your time, but also. So also. Well, you guys watch it, other folks. When we brought up, there were some contentious points. And the HPP is one where it did 3 things. One, it changed the definition of HPP, which I'm concerned a little bit about, but we just make sure. OIP, I brought questions to him and OIP assured me that it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Some of these projects, so there are projects where in the same round, and everybody at this table is guilty of it, we would see a sidewalk project here, part of a project here, and then it broken out, and we see the exact same project just a few feet down. So we did see that. That will no longer be, you have to combine those projects or do them in separate rounds. You cannot break them up into 2 projects. So that was more of what they were getting at. They wanted to, we wanted to change that. The thing that concerned me more was the changing of step 2. Where not only in the previous version, step 2 was based on benefit score, which was pre-dollar amount, not smart scale score. And so now it's based on smart scale score. And it was also ranked by district and not the state. So there's actually a couple of things that are going on here that I don't think got enough attention. So I am concerned with it. Do I think it's going to be an end? No. And yes, CTB members, I hope are more concerned, but I think the secretary said at the meeting, the CTB, and he says it quite a bit, CTB members can change it. So we don't have to go with what comes out of smart scale. Now.
But does that not make it perhaps less?
The whole point of smart scale was to try and get away from political interference and get more objective about how you hand out money.
Go back to that.
And the danger is that if the objective criteria now produce a very bad result, are the board members going to do that?
Right, and that's what I think it's going, right now, if I had to place a bet, that's where I think it's going to land, is that those 3 regions are going to be the only ones who are going to come out of this with any projects that.
Or HPP.
For HPP, yes, right, in that bucket.
Well, and then the other thing is the money is a big discussion of CTB members. Mr. Coleman has harped on it. And Mr. Coleman sits right next to me for months, where he has said, he brings up, he's an at-large member out of Hampton Roads. And he has said for months, probably a year, that the money doesn't make sense. And so he talks about the $10 million that we divide it to equalize it. And as he caught myself and Mr. Merrill's attention, we actually started looking at the money a lot more. And while it's 2% of them need the leverage funding, we left like $400 million on the table as a CTB last year. Those were projects that had leverage funding that we did not fund. Fredericksburg, we actually had one of the smaller because most of our projects that did leverage funding were funded. So we were smaller. I think we were, what was Garrisonville Road? So whatever you guys had on that.
Like $35 million.
Yeah. So we were one of the smaller ones, but it was a significant amount of money. And Mr. Merrill has asked that we continue to look at the money and figure out how you use that leverage funding and something that I've tried to bring up is there a difference between using NBTC money or whatever Richmond's is or Hampton Roads and making sure that those funding streams are not compared to the city of Fredericksburg, who $1 raised in the city of Fredericksburg came from the taxpayers, not from, in Northern Virginia's case, potentially the hot lane extensions, right? Which they do get revenue from that. And so, or Hampton Roads from Fredericksburg, transient occupancy tax or whatever the tax is that they, recordation tax, is that the one that goes to Hampton Roads? Yeah, so
Any other questions for Laura?
just put in good projects, guys. We can fight it. You got really good engineers here. Something that has been apparent to me is everywhere we go throughout the state, that people are, they're from Fredericksburg, they worked in Fredericksburg, or their families in Fredericksburg. So you have a lot of really good staff here. Utilize each other, put in good projects, don't game the system, and, you know, we'll go fight.
Carrie, do you have the
So.
slide with the proposal?
I do,
Okay,
yeah, I do, just letting them
Yeah.
talk.
Thank you,
But Thank you
Laura.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
we appreciate you being here too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can save my life. I voted against those things.
I know.
Why didn't you start with that?
Yeah, so we basically talked about all of this, but a lot of things are gonna change. We know it's gonna, go ahead to the next slide. We know that it's gonna look different. Laura pretty much talked about all this, but everything's coming up. Pre-applications are due the 31st of March. And we are currently working on them with TAC as hard as we can. Next slide. And these are our current draft regional projects in development. TAC is working on them, and our next TAC meeting is the 5th of February, and we hope to have all of our projects finalized by then.
TAC is the Technical Advisory Committee.
Yes,
for
for the-
Of FAMPO. And if you look at this list, we can put in initially 10 projects, and I think there are about 12 there. So 2 up to 4. And
Yeah,
of those 10, 5 will be on the FAMPO list, 5 will be on the GWRC list as pre-applications. And then we have to lose 1 project from each list. So the final list will be 8, right? So out of those about 12, about 8 will make it as our final applications with the support of VDOT and all of their help in, you know, improving those projects, with Carrie sitting for hours with some of our staff, getting all the supporting documents from your localities, economic development department, and et cetera, we will beef up those projects until they become as good as we can make them. And then we just hope for the best, because the rules have changed radically.
yeah, we're gonna do our best. There's tons of work ahead.
Okay, Chris.
Yeah, I just have a comment. Smart Scale was started off to get away from the political pressures. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was.
No. Oh,
Crystal asked me a question.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Give me.
Oh, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. So Smart Scale was the trying to get away from the political. And it seems like now what they're doing is that if you don't have the money, we're not gonna deal with you. And the state was supposed to take care of, at the very least, the high priority roads. So I feel like we're being forced into, and perhaps the CTP watched our last FAMPO meeting, that they're forcing us into an RTD, or RTA.
RTA.
Too many acronyms, because if you don't have the money, you're just not gonna get it. And that's very frustrating, because as a locality, we can then have the money, we can have a great project, but it's overlooked because we don't have enough money. But the rankings of the project, I thought, were supposed to be more on the safety, the need, as opposed to the local funding being able to back it up. So it's basically the state saying to us, localities, pick up more of the tab if you want your projects done, regardless of the necessity of those projects for the localities or for the regional network.
I am somewhat neutral, not objective, obviously, but somewhat neutral. I can tell you now that CTV members from other regions in the state of Virginia were not happy with the outcome last round. Hence this move to, in inverted commas, in quotes, improve the outcomes by tinkering now with the metrics. But the results are, in my view anyway, we've gone too far now. We've gone, the pendulum swung all the way to the other side, and now people are trying to claw it back. So they finally put the land use back in, but they haven't put in the second 2 out of the 3.
Step 2.
Step 2, they haven't
Yeah.
put back step 2, but they have put back the land use. And they haven't created that middle tier of regions which we'd worked so hard to get. They threw it out in December, so now we're back to what we had.
So politics are back in. Let's not play games. They are. And it's a way to force us, I think, into creating an RTA. And
Getting calls from other regions saying, tell us about how to create an RTA. So I said, we don't have one, we're still talking.
Right.
right.
Where did the
You
list,
summed it up very well, Chris.
where did this list come from?
This list came from your jurisdiction sending FAMPO applications for what they would like to see. And from the ones that say TBD are those pipeline studies and star studies that VDOT has been running, that the localities have been participating in. And it says TBD because we haven't yet got the final projects from those studies. We're waiting to see what those exact details will look like.
So what happened to Garrisonville Road? Because that was on here last year.
So
Yeah, as I said, your staff could answer that better perhaps, because.
Well, the board has not changed any direction to staff to take Garrisonville Road off of this list.
you wouldn't, so we receive requests from all the localities to put things on this list. And the ones from Stafford, which are, I think about 6
Yeah,
of those, and they did not insist on having Garrisonville Road in. That's the list that went through the TAC.
Yep.
It's not final. We have another TAC meeting the first week of February.
yeah, 5th of February. Now,
That's what we've received from the staff of each locality.
also note that the entire TAC has to vote on these projects. Too.
But those were you can see there the different ones from Stafford's side.
Yeah, there's some that are brand new that we've never even seen.
So I would encourage you to talk to your staff. I don't want FAMPO staff to get between the politicians and the
Sure.
staff of the jurisdiction.
Any other questions?
Not our place.
Okay. All right, moving on to item B, SS4A, corridors and project ideas. Becky.
Yes, Madam Chairman and members of the Policy Committee, packet that you have in your, materials are 5 high injury locations for each of the 5 George Washington Regional, Commission jurisdictions. The locations were identified by the consultant, data-driven, methods, as well as input from the localities in your Board of Supervisors and in the rural counties of Caroline and King George, your resident engineers help greatly. The countermeasures on each of these corridors are currently being cost estimate prepared, as well as the crash reduction benefits in each of those. In your next meeting in February, you'll receive the draft safety action plan that will have these cost estimates and details on how they were derived. And then we'll ask your approval to submit the safety action plan for public comment, hopefully with adoption in the March policy.
So there are 5 localities. In each locality, they've selected 5 corridors. On each of those corridors, they've selected specific infrastructure and educational projects that need to be done in order to improve the crash reduction, deaths, injuries, and all that kind of thing per corridor. So 5 jurisdictions, 5 corridors, is 25 corridors for which we've selected, as Becky just told you, the countermeasures with the consultant and with the staff and the safety and emergency services of your jurisdictions, right? So this is now going out to you for comment. It's in your pack, your staff have it, it's in their TAC materials. So we're asking for input, and then there's going to be a public comment period, which we're going to start and which Coley is going to run to get the general public's input. And then eventually we will bring this to you and to your localities for adoption when you're satisfied that these are the right improvements.
Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I remember looking over this, and please correct me if I'm am mistaken, I did not see the Dixon Street, Lansdowne Road, corridor in here. And this is one where we had a fatality and fairly recently. And this is one that I believe absolutely needs to be included because of that fatality. It's the one, a member of the resident city of Fredericksburg was killed last year, on that corridor. And it's something that we've been working in the city to try to address. And I know I had made a promise to get that included in Safe Streets for All one way or another. I think we had discussed this. And so I would ask you to please take that corridor back to the consultant for specific consideration.
We have a project under design through there right now.
2 projects. So 3 projects actually. So the reason for that, and I don't know, because it's
Sure.
up to locality staff, the consultant, VDOT is in those meetings. So I don't know why they didn't choose it in the end. But I do know that there are 2 projects on Dixon Street, Route 2, one in Spotsylvania, one in the city of Fredericksburg. Both are fully funded in smart scale. Both are going to be implemented. They include sidewalks and a bike path or a shared use path. Plus, there's the Dixon connector through the park. So there are a whole bunch of things that are going to be constructed there already. So I'm not saying this is so, but it might be that the staff and the consultant felt that to go and try and put other safety measures on there when you're going to have these 2 massive projects or 3 projects implemented soon, it might be better to wait until those projects are implemented because they include sidewalks, crossing and bike paths.
Okay.
Well, I have to correct myself. We do have localities, Spotsylvania and Fredericksburg. We combined Route 2, 17 Tide River Trail from Route 3
Okay.
all the way out to Jim Morris Boulevard.
Okay, then that was
Yeah,
my mistake. Then thank you.
Combined them.
I was looking for certain specific words and.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Jason, where that fatality occurred, that was kind of over by the Hardys, right?
Yes.
It was, okay, there.
Yeah, right on the border. of the
Right,
two
right.
localities,
And I
yeah.
know the push was to do some sort of traffic signal there or something, which really can't happen.
That's not really.
It's not realistic.
And I don't think that's not fixing the issue.
Right,
It's
well,
so-
because what's happening is they're crossing
Mhm.
over there. And then, cause I live down that
Yeah,
street, so
yeah.
I know, I see them.
That is the very section where these 2 small scale projects are, right?
I did
Right.
not know those
That-
projects were fully
Yes.
funded. That was.
Fully funded in the
Okay.
last 2 rounds of smart scale. The one round funded the Spotsylvania section. The other round, and the last round funded the city of Fredericksburg section, and it includes upgrading that intersection of Beulah Salisbury Road.
Mhm.
So that whole corridor is going to be upgraded in these 2 different smart scale projects.
Okay.
But what's happening though is even where there's crosswalks, cause we have it in Spotsy, they're not using them. And they're also like, cause we have a crosswalk at Glenda's Way and
Yeah.
in Route 2, they are not pushing the button. They don't push the button. And I'm gonna sit out there when the weather gets better, and I am going to sit there and I'm gonna tell them, please push the button.
Well, so
Cause I come out of there all the time and it drives me nuts.
I will say that shouldn't be necessary. They shouldn't have to push a button to get a walk signal. But regardless, we can have that conversation. later.
Yeah.
But my major mistake was I did not know that, one, I didn't see that, or that they were funded. I thought we were gonna need the Safe Streets for All grant funding to make that happen. So I do appreciate the update.
Millions
Thank
of
you.
dollars going in there.
And also, Ms. Hayes, on this one, they recognize the Glenda's Way issue. So we have 2 suggestions, what's called a hawk.
The hawk,
signal
yeah.
At Glenda's Way, and also the suggestion for an R-cut solution at Glenda's Way.
Yeah.
They do recognize, and VDOT partners helped us, that is so wide there, the rapid reflecting, flashing beacons, vehicles don't respond. Cassie was saying when she stopped, someone almost ran into
Oh, yeah.
us. They're like, why are you stopping? So they do recognize the need to beef that up either with a hawk signal, which is actually a stoplight.
Yep.
And And then the ARC is a more, severe, improvement that had study.
Talk would be fantastic. if We could get that.
FAMPO employs an engineer now.
Big words like talk.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Becky? Seeing none.
This will come back and it's out for comment, so please give your comment.
Okay, CMAC and STBG, John.
Good evening, everybody. So as Ian previously mentioned, it's congestion mitigation, air quality, carbon reduction. Now we've added another 2 letters to the end of it, and the surface transportation block grants. We are looking at funding for FY 2029. These are holdovers from the last round that are only eligible for the Stafford area TMA, but we are doing this in a public format.
Just
as
say
well
that
as
slowly, because we get 1,000 questions about that.
and then
Because, I'm just gonna emphasize it, because Stafford is part of the Washington DC TMA
Which stands for?
Transportation
management area. We then get extra funding. And we have agreed in our CMAC and STGB methodology that extra funding gets then set aside for, where's Dr. Young? She's gone.
She left.
Specifically for the North Stafford area, and that money only goes to bike and ped and transit projects. So, sorry, John,
TMA plus a 1 mile buffer around.
that's a 1 mile buffer, yes.
Exact. But
So
yeah.
we do apply that, you will get.
And Stafford has to apply, they have to use one of their application spots, and if they don't submit a project, then it goes into the journal pool. So
There's 3 years worth of minutes on that if you'd like to go back and read what transpired.
all right.
Okay,
Student heifer.
All right. So in this round, all of our jurisdictions and Fredericksburg Go submitted their full complement of 5 applications per section, as well as the 3 applications for Fredericksburg Go. 18 of these projects were roadway projects, so half of the projects were roadways, about a quarter was for active transportation, and a quarter for transit and studies. About 4 million of our expected $6 million, $6 million worth of funding will actually go to roadway projects. Next slide. So you can see this breakdown. We have just now closed our screening process. So right now the applications are in, and Connor and myself are now in the scoring process. In this, we are looking to score all the projects in their categories, and the top 2 projects in each category are typically funded. Basically, the most you can get per project is 50% of the pot. So if you have 2 projects asking for as much money as the pot allows, it works out to be a kind of a cap of 2 projects. We do have about $50 million worth of asks for our $6 million worth of projects. And hopefully we will be able to get this back in front of you in February, so you can actually see where the scoring has produced, where the projects fall, respectively of their categorization.
I know absolutely nobody in this room wants a regional transportation authority. However, if you look at that, you're asking us for $52 million and we only have $6 million to give you. So that just gives you an idea of how much we can actually fund of what you need.
So, and that is the end of my.
My statement that nobody wants a regional transportation authority is said with irony, for those of you who didn't get my sense of humor.
We got it. Okay. Any questions for John?
I long for the
All
day
right.
when Laurie Hayes is the person fighting for the station.
I
I'll buy you the
don't think it's gonna happen.
I don't have a coat that's warm enough.
Right.
You
I
can try this.
I could buy it. Okay, next. Any questions for John?
All right,
Thank you,
River.
John.
No, thank you, John.
I hope those who've chosen.
Now we're
spend their
going over to the FAMPO, the river crossing NEPA alternative study, and maybe some changes or updates.
That's the photo that I took last week of the office.
Tell Fran it's going, 2 of them straight down Centerport.
Take it away, John.
Okay, so with the river crossing study analysis, we had our first initial stakeholder meeting with our consultants and primarily the representative staff members at the jurisdictions, as well as VDOT. We can go to the next slide. So within this meeting, it's about an hour and a half long. The consultants really laid out like the scope and purpose of this study to kind of make sure that all the stakeholders were basically up to speed of what the staff was going to look at. Previously, this last couple of months, the Michael Baker and Associates Precision Systems, our consultants have been reaching out to the various entities, basically collecting as much data as they can. And they totally started to do kind of their data collection, finalizing that, and are in the analysis process. And so what they're now moving on is to doing some of their environmental inventory. They're now starting to reach out. They've been kind of in contact with a lot of different groups about other agency coordination. So we had a little bit more input from like the Virginia Outdoor Foundation, as well as the other kind of easement holders within the area. And they're slowly working on stakeholder coordination. So they're beginning in the process of eventually kind of planning out some of the prime public involvement that we're looking at in hopefully the next couple of months, as well as the preliminary screening. But their data collection efforts, if you haven't noticed that in early December, the consultants were actually taking traffic counts and getting additional traffic data.
And the reason we know that they actually did it is because we got a complaint from VDOT saying, who's putting cameras on our street infrastructure? And so now we actually know that our consultants actually did go out and put up cameras and do traffic counts because we got in trouble for it.
So yeah, so basically with outlining everything with the stakeholders, the county staff, they were basically saying, okay, we've done all this. Are there any critical areas that we are missing in our analysis? Where do we need to go out and do basically more homework to identify any other kind of blind spots? So we got an update on that. We can go to the next slide. They gave us quick snapshots of some of the actual traffic data they've collected. So you can actually see kind of how the traffic picks up. Let's see, this is Route 17. You see the initial AM peak. The midday doesn't drop off too much. And then all of a sudden you have the PM peak as well. So actually our AM and PM peak is, once we start getting busy, we stay busy, and then we have that last little bump in the PM. But if you look at another spot, which is the traffic on-ramp for 95 South, you get a little bit of a bump, and then you see the heavy commute pattern. So we're starting to get this information as it's coming through, and we're going to be working with the staff to say, okay, are these numbers making sense? We talked about the time of year and how that impacts some of our traffic table in that meeting.
And those 3 circles, just to add to what John is saying, are 3 problem areas. Just go back, please, one slide. Those 3 circles that you see there, the dotted circles, the queues there are longer than the available space. So that is where we're having severe congestion problems with the current roadway availability. So it's around Route 3 and Central Park, up there on 17, and down at the bottom on 17 where it connects with US 1. So those 3 areas in peak traffic are having significant problems right now, let alone 20 years from now.
So in some of these other ones, you see in a number of some just there today. It's kind of greenish is where they're doing traffic counts, and elsewhere they're doing some traffic analysis and turning movement. So we're looking as far down as Harrisonville Road. We've come all the way through Route 1 on the east and up Route 17 as well. So we're trying to get a whole picture. So it's not just the immediate corridor that we can kind of do a real traffic count analysis. We can actually see a little bit more of the network and how it's performing. So we're slowly going to get more and more data like this in as the process continues. So,
John, would your data here also include like the Westlake 700 single family homes that were approved 20 years ago in Stafford County? Would that be, it's up off of Route 17. Would your data include that additional traffic on Route 17? And any other,
So
land use?
If it's in the travel demand model, yes. I just don't know how much of the future build is in the capital model.
Yeah, this is current.
This
This
is
is current,
traffic counts analysis taken on
That's-
Wednesday, Thursday of the first
that's
week.
today.
Oh,
Uh,
that's today.
This is today, we did actual new counts on the highways and this is today.
Yeah.
So if it's this bad today,
Right.
when you build out all of those, that gets worse.
So yeah, the traffic, the model, they will be doing model work, we'll be trying to predict that, but this was actual counts as far as first week of December.
Okay, thank you.
Just open the highway open.
And so, environmental study area, we talked with staff, just trying to identify both, environmental and cultural resources. With this area, again, we kind of cast a wider net, as well as they've started, and here's some the count locations as well. Just to identify, okay, is this, the consultant's basically asking staff, okay, what else do we need to be kind of looking at and identifying? So that's kind of where the study is. We're
So everywhere
getting
you,
back.
sorry, I keep interrupting, John, but everywhere you see a small red line, an actual camera or a metering equipment was put there and then it counted the cars at that location and the trucks and the everything.
Okay, Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know, if you've had these discussions with them, but, as far as the city is concerned, I believe it's at least options B and C are going to be DOA. We have recently approved, development, of a fairly large scale that would not allow for, a river crossing at those points. And so I'd like to ask that we not look at those that would, interfere with that, since we're essentially now, saying this is developed land, as far as we're concerned, and like,
So
I know, it's our fault, but, you're gonna love it too.
The quick answer is that we have sent the neon development documents to the consultant.
Okay.
The consultant,
And so they will rework these corridors to avoid buildings that are already approved. But remember, this is what those proposals are what we suggested to them. They are now going to come up with up to 7 corridors because we paid for up to 7.
Okay.
And so there's only 4. So they will rework those, and when they present to the public, they will say there are up to these 7 that we can look at. It might be 4, it might be 5 or 3 or whatever.
Okay.
But we've sent them copies of that development plan that we
Okay,
saw
great.
and asked them to bear that in mind when they do their final lines of investigation. But they will investigate more than just 2.
All right, great, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Doctor, would that explain then, Ian, why the rough draft from the consultants, they had some, I thought they had one on the east side of 95 as well.
No, but this entire study is only west of 95.
West of 95.
Nothing east.
Okay, it's probably my angle when I was looking at.
and yes, the consultants actually, FAMPO, Becky helped create a, collage of all the potentially publicly available development things that were in the area along this corridor. So the, consultants do have those like neon there approved, as well as other ones that are in discussion. So they do have that, they are looking at that. And even with these lines, these were kind of just, again, when we did it was modeling runs. It's
Of course. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had that information and that would not be a concern.
Definitely talking with.
Can you
Mr. Mullen.
tell everybody a little bit
That
about?
is.
Yeah. What's that?
Can you just tell everybody a little bit about that project?
Yeah, can I just go
When
to
you-
point?
When you guys voted on that?
Sure. So, as I'm coming up, this is a project that actually we've been in discussions with the developer for years. I believe, and Mr. Rudy can, 3 years. Yeah, so it's been a long time in the planning. It's right, I want to say right around here, this area, essentially where B and C would be
It would
coming
actually be
through.
right
What
here.
roads
Well,
are
there's-
there?
Give us.
So this, it's Gordon Shelton Boulevard.
Okay.
It's along Gordon Shelton. There's gonna be actually a development of a couple new roads, I think, just to make the grid pattern, actually work for
Okay.
that, because it's gonna be more than 700 units. co-working space. It's a large investment, it's part of our economic
So
development.
that's by Wegmans, right?
Yes,
Okay,
in the stadium.
really? I'm trying to think where you could fit that.
That's along the road that goes to where we used to have the concerts.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right next to that.
Yeah, so right now, there's nothing
Okay,
there.
okay.
Yeah, so that's one of the last
Get them out there.
large scale opportunities in the city.
Okay.
So
Okay.
He said so.
Remember, the reason we hire a
55.
consultant is to do independent research, not influenced by us, so that they can, from a more objective perspective, come back and say, this one and this one and this one is just not possible for reasons, and this one and this one is possible, and here's what we think about each one, here's what it'll cost, here's what the impacts on the traffic will be, etc. So we hired an independent consultant on purpose.
yeah, okay, great. I just wanted to make sure everyone had all the information. So
So
Okay.
everything you sent us,
Thank you
we
for,
send.
actually, thank you for that. That's helpful.
you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome, yeah.
All right,
Very helpful.
we have more, John?
Yep, we can go through, just again, they were, most of what they're gonna do next with the meeting schedules coming forward. So we're gonna have a fair amount, like, for example, there's gonna be 6 in-person meetings, as well as our, public meetings as well. They're going to coordinate with the stakeholders. We are slowly building towards having the information together that we can bring it to this committee as well as its subcommittees, and then we can also make it a public comment, public meeting.
There'll be a public workshop.
Yes. In the next meeting, and I just put the calendar and kind of progress slides, so we are just ramping up kind of our first good chunk, and we're gonna slowly start building up to that. So we're now getting our homework done, we're now building to that.
Study will be finished this year, right? It doesn't go into next year, so this year, done. Then you decide yes or no, and then we're done. Move on.
What's the,
Yes.
yes, ma'am, what's the public facing aspect of this work in progress
So
throughout the process? I mean,
throughout the process, so of course, this information was is public information. The prior work was done as well as the stakeholder meetings are public, for folks to attend, as well as each one of our committees, subcommittee meetings, and then we will get like the large venue space and have a full public workshop.
Two public workshops.
And we previously had a public meeting on the river crossing as well in Stafford County.
By the time we get to December, they'll all be sick of it, and so will you. You'll just decide you like it or you don't, and that'll be done.
so rather than clutter the public's view of this, it's collated and worked on and massaged, and then you put out some sort of project or some sort of updates then. So okay.
Every study, we always have a staff level internal meeting, which is the one we just had, to work on what the consultant's doing before it gets into the public space, right? So if we see something they've forgotten, we tell them, they go do it. So when we think, okay, this is good now, we present it to the public. It just helps us to not make embarrassing mistakes in public. It's a double check system.
Yeah, the only reason I asked that to members is you bringing up that potential project in Central Park. That wasn't a data point on the initial outlay of it. So how does that affect their work?
Well, and that's what we were talking
Yeah.
about before with, there are more corridors that we've paid them to provide us than that they have provided. us.
Currently, it's just focused on the west side. That's
Well,
it.
no, it's always gonna be on the west side.
Okay, so the additional corridors, that's wherever their research.
Right, because we have environmental concerns.
So we've given them a study area, which we've defined, and within that study area, they're gonna put all sorts of options together that they can think of.
Right, but it's
It's a small area to begin.
when you're talking about removing or the two center options, even though they're gonna move,
Mhm.
they're flexible. As them being DOA, that limits the actual potential area to use.
It does,
You,
yes.
without bulldozing that whole development,
Right.
it hasn't yet been built. You can shift that road to the west or to the east and potentially still build it. I'm not suggesting that's a good option. I'm just suggesting that the consultant will look at.
Yeah, they'll look at it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It doesn't make any, large scale changes.
Okay,
Primarily,
great.
the previous rounds, like each one of those options, the way they were designed was intentionally to try to identify how they would connect with the existing road infrastructure. And that's the reason why they kind of moved in incremental fashion so that we were capturing how the bridge would potentially impact the existing road network if it would.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
So, I don't think I missed this, but, given that you guys were working on this project for 3 years, I kind of feel like maybe there should have been some disclosure. I mean, you were obviously talking about it at the city council. Couldn't the FAMPO board have known that at least this was a potential project that could impact the NEPA study? I don't know. I guess I find it a little odd that, we're here at monthly meetings and none of us knew that this was potentially gonna impact the river crossing.
Well, I mean, it's, duly noted, it was never an intention to, you know, pull anything, to keep anything from anybody. That was never the intention.
What we
Right, but I would think that if I was in Stafford County and somebody was looking at a project to come over the river and I'm dealing with a rezoning that I've been working on for 3 years, it would be pretty hard for me not to say to my colleagues in the room, hey, just for the record, and especially since we were getting ready to enter into a contract with, Michael Baker for a lot of money, it may have changed our perspective a little bit. So, I mean, I know I would say, hey, our board is discussing this project. We don't know where it's gonna go. We're in favor of it. We may have the votes, we may not, but we should at least, let you all know about it. But that's just my opinion. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
Like I said, I hear you.
Chris?
Might not have been the intention, but that was what actually resulted. So the fact that you guys put a project right there, did you take into account any river crossing to come through it to enhance it in any way? Or
No.
was it, we're putting it here, don't put a river crossing here?
No, that was not considered when we began these discussions, or at any point.
Was it a rezoning? Is that what happened?
Well, it wasn't, it's not a rezoning per se, I think what you're thinking about, but it was the number of units that ended up in that development exceeded what was in the initial allowance.
Okay. And then the second question I have, just real quick, is the other intersections that are being looked at, Harrison Road and Central Park on Route 3. Does this study provide any relief for those, or does it just say those intersections will fail or something, or will it provide a way to fix those additionally?
So the model runs will examine what the impacts would be of building option A, or building option B, or building option C, D, or whatever. So in recommendations at the end of the study, they will say, this is the best option based on all of these impacts that we examined. Historical, civil war, environmental, congestion on other surrounding roads versus relief that it will produce on surrounding roads. So the final recommendation will have looked at all of those impacts and give the best solution for bearing in mind all of these different constraints. So that's part of the job of the environmental study to say, if we build a bridge here, what happens? Versus if we build it over there, is it any better?
But will give a solution to the problem. I'm thinking Salem Church Road. So if Salem Church Road backs up even more with the best scenario, will it also provide, this is what we should do to relieve that problem that's going to be created or added on to?
So typically what a study like this does is it says, this is the best location, here are all the reasons why. If you go ahead, these are additional measures that you should take in order to ameliorate whatever it is. So it might be you exclude a left turn off the bridge because it's going to have this result. So they will look at the impacts, right? That said, you need to just acknowledge that Route 3 is the most complex, one of maybe 2 really complex roads in the area. because of the number of very significant intersections that are closely stacked together. The I-95 off-ramp, Hardy Silver Parkway, Bragg Road, Central Park Boulevard, Salem Church Road, etc. You've got a lot of these major roads coming together on Route 3, so it's very complex. So what we found in our staff level study is that the first section of Route 3, building a river crossing bridge, reduces the traffic on Route 3 by, I can't remember how many cars, like a couple thousand. From Bragg, is it Bragg Road to Salem Church? I forget. Anyway, the next section of Route.
You see a significant reduction.
Yes, and then from Bragg to Salem Church, there's an increase. It's around about the same number of vehicles. Because, but it's, forgive me, but it's Spotsylvania people trying to get to Stafford. Stafford people trying to get to Spotsylvania.
Right.
And so because there isn't a north-south road in Spotsylvania, the same kind of problem Stafford has, because there isn't a north-south road other than Salem Church Road, the traffic ends up clustering wherever you connect future roads. The traffic gets the cluster on Salem Church Road if the cars want to get south. Or somebody who lives in Spotsylvania who works in Stafford, like at the Geico Center or at a whatever, they are going to come up Salem Church Road and then they're going to want to cross the river to get to the job. The alternative is that they have to get down Route 3 and onto 95, which clogs up Route 3 even more. So yes.
So the study points out that there'll be problems. Does it provide solutions to those problems? Or
it will typically recommend solutions, but it's not going to go and design new roadways on all of the roads in the area because there are too many, right? So it's not going to go and do the design work. It's going to say you would need to do something about upgrading this intersection, or you need to prevent turns over here in the future because it will create this effect. But it's not going to go and design new roads.
no, it won't design, but it will. Oh, okay, because the other one that we've talked about, our localities have talked about in years past, is the connection over from Silver across into the mall.
Yes.
And so if that might be a relief valve for some of this traffic.
That is a subject of the pipeline study on Road 3 that VDOT is currently working on.
And all of these work together perfectly.
And the East-West study, and the East-West study, and the I-95 corridor study that preceded me. And that's, all these studies are the reason we know that the best solution to the traffic on Route 3 is actually the Harrison Road interchange. The best solution for the traffic on US 17 is building the river crossing, right? There is a solution for most of these big snarl-ups, but it's not one solution that fixes all of the problems.
Right, it's multiple. They have to work together.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Okay. All right, thank you very much, John. All right, item E, Stafford County Route 1 and Enon Road Improvement Project Raise Grant Application, letter of support.
Shut it down.
Chairperson, this is a request from the county to give a letter of support for this funding application for this particular roadway. Typically, we have staff, when we get asked by a jurisdiction, we always recommend giving the letter of support because it doesn't cost us anything. And except for one occasion when I first arrived here, things were acrimonious, we managed to get all of the letters of support approved by the policy committee. So staff recommends you support this.
Do you need a motion to support this? So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Cast your, or,
Aye.
again.
What happens when you're the chair of three things?
So, any abstentions, motion carries. Thank
There
you.
we go. This last item, just let me talk to it because it's closing out of two projects. So effectively what happened here is that we underspent on the freight summit by quite a lot. And we had a request from the consultant on the other study, the BCR study, for a little additional funding. They have spent more hours than were in the task order. I remember the policy committee asked them to do an extra scenario, which wasn't in the task order, so that cost them hours. However, they didn't warn us that it was going to take a lot of effort. So they've agreed to split the cost of the run. They're going to absorb about 2/3 of it. what we're doing here is asking you to transfer $12,000 from the savings on the one study to be 12,000 and some dollars additional on the other study, so we can close both studies out and pack them away. They are both finished.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on item F? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you very
Okay, do
much.
we have any correspondence?
Yes, there's one item there. Holly, do you want to do this?
Sure, this is just an update,
This is the Senate bill.
yeah, that's right.
That
about
was
to-
discussed this evening at GWRC for King George County to leave GWRC and join PD 17. And we're just alerting you because not everybody on FAMPO is on GWRC. They had a long discussion about it tonight at their meeting. And I believe they're going to have some further discussions at GWRC, but we're just drawing your attention to the fact that we note the Senate bill in Virginia to remove King George County from the George Washington Regional Commission. And we received this letter from the Richmond County supporting our proposal to have Route 3 declared a corridor of statewide significance. You all know about this. So that county has sent us a letter saying we support this, and we're sending a letter to the Secretary for Transportation, and we also got one there from the Culpeper County saying they support us declaring Route 3 corridor of statewide significance. And for those who watched the CTB meeting, our CTB member stood up and pointed it out to all of them, and OIP said, okay, we're busy looking into your memo, we'll get back to you. And apparently the question is, do we declare the whole of Route 3 a corridor of statewide significance or only a portion of Route 3? And OIP is hiding behind that to give them more time to do some research and come back to the CTB. So at least they talked about it, CTB, so progress, right? And other counties think it's a good idea, so good.
All right, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, staff and agency reports.
Just a reminder of the RTA subcommittee next Monday, this room, 6 p.m.
All right, do we have board member or any chair comments? VDOT, do you have anything? VDOT engineers? No, thank you for being here. I would like to also introduce Al Watkins and Nick. Kevin, I mean, I don't know why I said that. Kevin with, Kevin Stevens with Tara Durant's office, Senator Durant's office. And then Al Watkins is on the CTAC, and has been here. Didn't have any comments for us tonight. Oh, you did?
Too late.
But I just wanted to make sure that other people knew who was here in the room. So, with that, next meeting, February 26th at 7:30, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank
you.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful.